All right, so we are here in front of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. for the start of the third week of the trial against Mr. Michael Sussmann. And behind us right there is Mr. John Durham, the lead prosecutor, the special counsel, who's been investigating the alleged spying that was done against Trump's campaign for one, as well as this Michael Sussmann case, the former Clinton campaign lawyer, who allegedly lied to the FBI one count. Mr. Durham, are you going to go after Rodney Joffe after this is over? All right, no luck there, but at the very least, we now know that they are in the building. Now, the jury has been deliberating for the past 2 days now, if you include today. They started on Friday, you had the 3-day weekend, and now today they're going to come back together and deliberate.
Well, 3 short hours after John Durham entered the courtroom, the jury finished deliberating, and they decided that Mr. Michael Sussmann was not guilty of lying to the FBI. And as soon as both myself and my team heard the news, we rushed right back down and went over to the court, where we actually got a chance to catch Mr. Durham leaving the building, and we even got a chance to ask him a few questions. Take a listen.
This could cause issues for future cases out of your program.
Do you have any plans for Rodney Joffe after what's come out in this trial, sir? Do you feel that the Danchenko case will go differently, given the fact that it's going to be out of Virginia?
Mr. Durham, do you still believe that Michael Sussmann lied to the FBI?
Mr. Durham, any reaction to the verdict at all? I know you sent out a paper statement.
Now, as you heard the reporter standing next to me yelling about the statement that Mr. Durham released, let me read it to you now. It's relatively short, but it does break down his thinking. Here's what John Durham said right after the jury announced their verdict. Quote, "While we are disappointed in the outcome, we respect the jury's decision and thank them for their service. I also want to recognize and thank the investigators and the prosecution team for their dedicated efforts in seeking truth and justice in this case." Then, right after we saw John Durham drive off in that black SUV, Mr. Michael Sussmann came out maybe 3 minutes later, and he gave his take on the jury's verdict. It was about a minute-long press conference, and we recorded it for you. Take a listen. And by the way, I just sped up the press conference a little bit, so that way we can get through it faster.
Good afternoon. I have a few thoughts to share now that the trial has ended. First, I told the truth to the FBI, and the jury clearly recognized that with their unanimous verdict today. I'm grateful to the members of the jury for their careful and thoughtful service. Despite being falsely accused, I'm relieved that justice ultimately prevailed in my case. As you can imagine, this has been a difficult year for my family and me, but right now we are just grateful for the love and support of so many during this ordeal, and I'm looking forward to getting back to the work that I love. Finally, I want to thank my legal team at Latham & Watkins, Sean Berkowitz, Michael Bosworth, Natalie Rayo, and Catherine Yao. They are the finest lawyers, and they work tirelessly on my case. Thank you.
Mr. Sussmann, what's next for you?
Now, I want to give you 2 separate takes on the verdict. There were people who were surprised by it and people who were not. In regards to the people who were surprised by it, this was because they were looking at the fact that the jury was weighing their decision based on 2 sets of records that they were looking at in regards to whether or not Mr. Sussmann lied to the FBI. Because on the one hand, you had text messages from Mr. Sussmann, the Clinton campaign lawyer, to the FBI lawyer saying, "Hey, I'd like to meet with you because I have this information that I believe is relevant to you. I'd like to come to you essentially as a good Samaritan." And he specifically wrote, "I'm coming as an individual, not on behalf of any client." That's what he wrote to the FBI lawyer. However, in separate testimony that Mr. Michael Sussmann gave to Kash Patel, back when Kash Patel was working for the DNI, he specifically was asked, "Did you meet with the FBI on behalf of a client?" And Mr. Sussmann unequivocally said that he did. He met with the FBI on behalf of a client. And so you see, those 2 statements cannot be equally true. He can't both have met with the FBI just by himself and not on behalf of a client, and at the same time, he met with the FBI on behalf of a client. So he either lied to the FBI or Congress. And so which was it? Furthermore, besides just those competing statements, the prosecution, they actually presented different types of evidence showing that Mr. Michael Sussmann was not just acting as a good Samaritan when he went over to meet with the FBI. Now, one interesting example that the prosecution gave was that they showed a map of where Mr. Sussmann actually went to purchase the thumb drive that he gave to the FBI. This was the thumb drive with the data that had the Alpha Bank Trump campaign so-called collusion evidence. And what happened was that Mr. Michael Sussmann, he actually left his law office and walked a few blocks over to a Staples to purchase the thumb drive. Then he went back, he loaded it up with the data, and then the next day he went on over to the FBI and gave it to them. However, just 3 days after that meeting, he actually billed the Clinton campaign for the purchase of that thumb drive. He billed the Clinton campaign for the purchase of the thumb drive that he supposedly gave to the FBI just as a good Samaritan and not on behalf of the Clinton campaign. Here's in fact what an Epoch Times article says in regards to these billing records. Quote, Al Gore, who is part of the prosecution team, brought the jury's attention back to the billing records from Sussmann, showing he purchased flash drives on September 13th of 2016 from a Staples around the corner from his office. The charge was billed to Clinton's campaign. And so you see what's going on here. He went to meet with the FBI saying, hey, I'm not coming here on behalf of anyone, I'm just a private individual. He handed them a flash drive with all the data on it, but then 3 days later, he actually billed the Clinton campaign for that flash drive. You quite literally cannot make this stuff up. However, it appears that the jury did not buy it. Now here's where the case gets a little bit tricky, and we still need to get clarification on what the jury found, because they found him of being not guilty of lying to the FBI. However, what does that actually mean? Did they find that he did tell the FBI initially that he was representing a client, or did they find that he was always being honest about not representing a client? That part is not exactly clear. Or it might have been the case that they found that even though he lied, it wasn't material to the FBI's investigation. Meaning, even though he did lie to the FBI would have done it anyway. Basically, it wasn't material to their investigation. Perhaps that is what they found. The third option is the fact that the jury pool is made up of people here in Washington, D.C. who are overwhelmingly Democrat. In fact, back in the last election in 2020, 93% of people here in Washington, D.C. voted for Joe Biden. And prior to that, in 2016, 90% of people voted for Hillary Clinton. And so even though both the defendants and the prosecutors in the case both helped to select the jury pool, well, when you're working with a very politically charged case like this one, and in a town like this where pretty much 93% of people are Democrats, it's a little bit hard to pick a jury that is not biased. However, as you can see from John Durham's statement, he did say that he believes in the judicial process and says that he will continue fighting for justice. Now, in regards to the next steps in John Durham's investigation into the alleged spying that occurred against the Trump campaign, wait, hold on. Do you hear the sound of a coin flipping?
You're right. It's a gold coin from American Hartford Gold, my personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Listen, you already know that inflation right now is at a 40-year high, interest rates are skyrocketing, and unfortunately, it looks like we are heading straight for a recession. And so, stuck between this record inflation and a looming recession, well, our retirement accounts are in jeopardy. Now, I don't give you any financial advice, but I will tell you that I buy gold and silver, physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold every single month. And I would recommend that you give them a call and see what they can do for you. Because not only can they deliver this gold and silver directly to your doorstep, but they can also deposit it directly into your IRA and your 401k accounts, making the entire process super simple and protecting you from whatever comes in the future. And best of all, right now, they are running a promotional offer for our viewers, for the viewers of Facts Matter, where on your first order, they will give you up to $2,500 worth of free silver on your qualifying purchase. So calling them is an absolute no-brainer. Their phone number is 866-242-2352. That's 866-242-2352. Or you can text Roman to 655-32. They are one of the highest rated firms in the entire country. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and they have quite literally tens of thousands of satisfied clients across the entire country, including me, myself. So give them a call. They're a great sponsor for this episode. And now let's head on back to the studio.
In terms of the next steps, the next case that John Durham is working on is the case of Igor Danchenko. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, that's because he was the primary source for Christopher Steele when he was putting together the Steele dossier. Now, this is from an article regarding the case that's coming up in October from the Epoch Times. Quote, Danchenko was indicted in November of 2021 for lying to the FBI, the same type of charge that Sussmann faced. Specifically, Danchenko is alleged to have lied about his own sources, making up a conversation with Sergei Milyan, a man he never met, and concealing from the FBI his conversations with Clinton operative Charles Dolan. However, besides the fact that there are similarities between the Michael Sussmann case and this Igor Danchenko case, there are three main differences. The first is the fact that the Sussmann case took place in D.C., whereas this Danchenko case will be taking place in Virginia, which is actually what I asked John Durham when I was yelling out a question to him. He never answered it, but here's specifically the difference and the impact that it might have on that new case. Quote, Danchenko was charged in Virginia, not in Washington, D.C. That means the jury pool will be more favorable to Durham. Like Sussmann, Danchenko talked to the FBI in Washington, But unlike Sussmann, he later repeated his lies at his home in Virginia when the FBI came for follow-up interviews. That Durham chose to charge Danchenko in Virginia, where the lies were repeated, instead of in Washington, where they were first told, gives us an insight into how Durham views the Washington jury pool. Then the second difference between Sussmann and Danchenko is the fact that while Sussmann was charged for lying just once to the FBI, Danchenko is charged for lying 5 times. Here's what the article states, quote, "The second big difference is that Danchenko is charged with 5 lies, not just 1. In fact, an analysis of the only publicly available Danchenko interview transcript appears to show other lies. However, Durham charged just 5, perhaps because he has audio recordings of those lies, which would be another difference between the Sussmann and Danchenko cases. And then lastly, the third big difference between Danchenko and Sussmann is the fact that unlike Sussmann, Danchenko does not enjoy so much Democratic Party privilege. Here's what the article goes on to state, quote, "Lastly, Danchenko does not enjoy Democratic Party privilege. Sussmann is a high-powered, well-connected Democratic Party lawyer who represented Clinton and who himself is represented by a high-powered team of top lawyers. Danchenko's situation is very different. He's a Russian national with few connections. There will be no special privileges and he will likely be convicted." And so we will just have to wait and see what happens with this Danchenko case. Until then, what I will do is probably in the next few days, maybe early next week, I will put together a fairly large video documenting all of the developments that came out of the Sussmann case, because there are quite a number of real developments. Sometimes they were tiny, but the implications are large, and to explain the implications, you need to explain a lot of backstory for each of those cases. I think there's about 7 or 8 implications that came out of this case, and so we will have to compile them, and probably early next week I'll put that video together. Until then, I guess we have to wait until this Danchenko case. We will be reaching out to the office of John Durham to get some documents from the Sussmann case that we were not actually able to get at the courthouse today because they were sealed. Maybe we can get them and share them with you. But until then, if you want to read more about this decision in the Sussmann case as well as the upcoming Danchenko case, I will throw everything down into the description box below this video so you can check it out for yourself and learn more about what's going on. And all I ask in return is that you take a super quick moment to smash that like button so the YouTube algorithm will share this video out to ever more people and let the truth be known far and wide. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.